Let's look at the rational function f of x is equal to x plus 1 divided by x minus 1. That's a complex function. And the first thing we want to do is find the intercept for the graph. So let's find the x-intercept. The x-intercept, as we talked about earlier, is when we let y equal to 0. And if we put a 0, so we would have 0 is equal to x plus 1 over x minus 1. Now this is something you may not have thought about. If I want to get rid of that denominator, I multiply by x minus 1 on both sides just to eliminate that. We still get 0. So x is going to be a negative 1. So we have a negative 1 here. Y-intercept, let x equal 0. And if we did that, we have 0 plus 1. Let's see if 0 plus 1 over 0 minus 1, and that is a negative 1 as well. Determine the domain. The domain in this case is going to be all the real numbers except for 1. And when you're looking at domain, let's concentrate on denominator, D domain, D denominator. And we have in the denominator x minus 1 equals 0. X would be 1. So the domain, now, what would be everything except 1. Remember, we're in the denominator. So if I put a 1 in the denominator, 1 minus 1 would be 0. And we can't divide by 0. That's undefined. The next question asks for the vertical asymptote. The same thing is true for the vertical asymptote. I'm going to look at x minus 1 equal to 0. X is going to be equal to 1. So that's our vertical asymptote. The horizontal asymptote. Let's go back. Let me write this problem here again. F of x equal x plus 1. Because there's just some rules that we have to know for horizontal asymptote. Now, in this particular case, I'm going to call this exponent n, and I'm going to call the bottom exponent m. So it's just the opposite of our alphabets. A, B, C, D is M, N, O, P. This, we're going to use N, M. Okay, and the rule says that if N is less than M, let's change colors. If N is less than M, and maybe I should have wrote the N in green, but I didn't, so we're good. Y, the horizontal asymptote, is 0. If they're equal to each other, then we look at the leading coefficient. And that's going to tell us what to do, or what it is. So this one was equal to 0. So looking at the leading coefficients. What I mean here is the coefficient here and here. And if n is greater than m, then we have no horizontal asymptote. I'm going to change this n to red. Okay. So let's look at what we have here. What is the exponent here? Is a 1. That's the exponent is a 1. So n is equal to m. So we look at the leading coefficients, 1 divided by 1. So the horizontal asymptote would be 1. So the next, you could put this in the calculator and come up with the answer, but let's see. What the answer would be D. Okay, because we're looking at the vertical asymptote. The vertical asymptote was 1. The horizontal asymptote is 1. Don't get it confused with C, because that horizontal asymptote on that one is a -1. So they're pretty close. You have to keep your good eye on it. And then you could graph that. So the best answer for this problem, or the correct answer, would be D.